Hello, and welcome to Off the Roll. I'm Troy Hirschman, your host. Today we have Angie Miller on our podcast. Angie's been the athletic trainer at Avon High School for over 30 years. Angie's got some great stories, and we're looking forward to hearing a lot of them today. Angie's also a member of the Indiana Athletic Trainers Association Hall of Fame and the Cardinal Sports Medicine Society Ring of Honor. Angie's most important contributions right now are with the National Athletic Trainers Association Historical and Archives Committee. She's also been on the IATA History and Archives Committee as well. She's all about history, and we're looking forward to hearing some of it today on Off the Roll. So we're going to go off the roll with Angie Miller. Hi, Angie.
Hey, Troy, good to be here. Thanks for take number two of this.
Yeah, take number two is exactly the part of this. So we're going to get started again, kind of like I always do. And I asked kind of about your history and how you got started in athletic training and kind of your story to start out with. So roll it away.
Okay, so actually mine goes back to high school. Before my senior year of high school, I was a girls basketball manager because I was not good enough to make the team. And I went to Anderson Highland High School, and the basketball coaches sent the boys basketball manager and myself over to Anderson University for a student trainer camp. But they ended up not having enough to have the student athletic trainer camp. So the boys basketball manager and I just went over and hung out with Steve Reisinger, I think 4 or 5 days a week for about a 3 week period. So that's where I got my introduction. And we also, at my high school, I had two athletic trainers. Our volleyball coach was actually an athletic trainer. I don't think he was certified, Randy Looper. And then I think my junior year, we had Eric Walser. And I tried to find him a few years ago, and he was still practicing. So
okay,
as an athletic trainer. That's where I got my start. So then went to Ball State. And I actually started off as a physical therapy major, but then they dropped it like my first quarter at Ball State. So then I had to find something else. So then it was, I switched to elementary education, but I couldn't print neat enough, nor could I play the auto harp and sing. So that was out pretty quickly. So then switched to, for my freshman year at Ball State, I was interested in athletic training, and I would try to find out about how to get into the athletic training program. And it was a minor at the time. And I would always, because I didn't know where the training room was in UGym because it was hidden.
Right.
So I would always go to Mary O'Carroll's office, and I would just stop by, and she was never in there. But, then again, I didn't know that she was in the athletic training room.
Yeah.
So finally, then the beginning of my sophomore year, I somehow found my way. Mary O'Carroll was gone. Mike Ferrara was there. Rex Sharp was his first year. Cindy McKnight was her first year as well. And then Tony Cox, I think it was Tony's second or third.
Yeah.
And so found them, interviewed in the office in the UGIP training room with all four of them. So sat down, said when Tony found out that I had Henry County roots, that my dad was from Knightstown, so that kind of was an instant connection there with Tony. So had a great interview and got accepted into the program. Was super nervous about it. Met with Mike Ferrara, and he's like, well, athletic training is only a minor, so you need to have a major. So what are you going to major in? And I was like, well, I was L-Ed, so I chose secondary education. Then I had to pick an area, and history was my favorite subject in high school. So I picked secondary education, social studies. So, so 5 years at Ball State, 4 in the athletic training student program, and had a blast, met a lot of great friends there. People that are still good friends to this day, and people that I'm in touch with. So that's how I got my start.
So talk to me a little bit about the high school part of it, because a lot of us, in Mark Lito's podcast a little bit, talked a little bit about kind of his athletic trainer at the high school level, and Snowball talks a little bit about his, and so did you? I mean, those guys were around, and you went to Anderson University, but did you kind of do anything? Did you learn any skills when you're at the high school level?
No, actually, no, I didn't work with
Yeah.
them work with them at all. I watched them. Watched them. I didn't learn anything until I went and hung out with Steve
Yeah.
for those 2 weeks. And then Steve taught us some basic taping, taught us about ice and heat and, just the basic modalities and the basic first aid stuff back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I mean, that's how I got started. And it was a Kramer camp. And I look back on that now and I'm like, I can't believe they didn't know any better, but I can't believe they let us I mean, for me, they just turned me loose and said, okay, you're our athletic trainer. And I didn't know any better. So I just kind of acted as if I knew stuff, and I just learned along the way a little bit, but I wasn't sure if that was kind of the same way for you or not too. I mean,
yeah, not really, especially since I didn't go to Anderson College until the summer before my senior year. So I mean, what I would see what they would do as athletic trainers, but also, and we actually had an athletic training room at my high school, surprisingly, but I think back to because they weren't there all the time. I mean,
right.
Looper coached volleyball, and so I think back to whenever somebody sprained their ankle, I can vividly remember boys basketball players, whenever they sprained the ankle, it was the custodian who ran to the athletic training room, got the bucket, filled it up with ice and water, brought it out to the bench, and the kid, because he was the one that had the key. So
right.
So when the athletic trainers weren't there, that's what I saw.
The custodian he didn't know about rice, but he knew enough to like stick your bucket in this ice bucket. Yeah.
Exactly.
This ice bucket. Yeah.
And I mean, I think of that. I think of watching the boys basketball team, do their walk on the sides of their feet, with their ankles to try to prevent ankle sprains, and always getting, salt tablets and vitamin C out of the big Kramer jugs, as they were take a handful as they're going to practice.
Yeah. Nobody said, hey, wait a minute here, that might not be the best thing to do. I mean, the vitamin C didn't hurt anything, but the salt tablets, that could. I don't know why I'm retaining all this water. Yeah. So
that's what they did. It's crazy.
So talk to me a little bit about who were the group of, if you can remember, because obviously Mark could not. And we are pulling punches on this podcast because it's funny. I did get a reach out from Phil Nelson after Mark's story the last podcast. So he's like, thanks a lot. I really know where I stand right now. So we're not afraid to pull some punches here. So Mark, you couldn't remember who you came in with, but who did you come in with?
I wasn't on the Mark Lido plan, but I was close since I had an extra, had my red shirt my 5th year. But so it was Lido and Jessup, Diane Lewis, Lori Gravener, Gary Hall, Brad Dasher. They were all in my class. Denise Hardy. Those were the people that were all in my class. I mean, the upperclassmen was let's see, Deb Wright and Joanne Winters. And Brett Draper. Brett Draper and Doug Dietzel. Those guys were all seniors when I first got into the program. So
And so you kind of came in right. Was that Rex's first year when you came in?
It was Rex's first year. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was I didn't have any idea at the time that was all most of their first year. So that was a huge change to the program, to everything.
Yeah. I mean, you think about Cindy and then Mike and then Rex coming in, and that was a lot of philosophical change too with that.
Mm-hmm.
So what sports did you work when you were at Ball State?
I started off with swimming. I started off working swimming. And I remember the first time a diver came in and she had smacked the water. She was bruised from head to toe, and I had no idea what that was. I was like, oh my goodness, were you in a car wreck? What the heck happened? But I didn't know anything about swimming. And then I think, I actually worked with the cheerleaders.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Cheerleader athletic trainer, which turned out to be great because I got to go to the MAC conference basketball tournament, and
Okay.
Ball State won that year in
Yeah.
'86. So that was amazing. Worked football then, I think fall of '87. Also worked softball that year. Got to go on their spring break trip to Florida, which was back in the day, which is driving the Ball State vans.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and when the
Yeah.
students could actually drive.
Yeah. I drove some of those vans. Yeah.
Yeah. Then volleyball, and went out to California on their fall trip with them. And then I think ended up with a women's track was the last
Okay.
sport that I worked.
I want you to paint a picture, since you have a great remembrance of the sports that you worked, but I want you to paint a picture, particularly for these, if there's younger people in this audience that are listening to the podcast, of what it was like to be in those clinical experiences with basically almost full autonomy, and what was important about that, what was frustrating about that, those experiences, and then maybe what you remembered that have helped you along the way professionally along with that.
I mean, you learn to think on your feet. You learn to be flexible. I remember, as I was a sophomore, and first year in the athletic training program, and going down to Florida was softball, and I had a student athlete that got hurt, and I know. I mean, this was before cell phones, so it's not like I could pick up the phone and call somebody or text and say, "What do I do?"
Yeah.
So I remember thinking, what if I call, let's see, we go to Stetson tomorrow. What if I call, and we're in Florida, in DeLay, Florida. What if I call their athletic trainer now and see if their athletic trainer will take a look at him? So, so that's what I did. I mean, as a 19, 20-year-old, I mean, I called their athletic trainer. Can't remember who it was, but they're like, yeah, bring her over. So I took the van, took that athlete, and we drive over to Stetson, find the athletic training room, and athletic trainer takes a brief look and says, well, if she were my athlete, I'd get an x-ray. So then had to figure out, okay, now have to get to the hospital. I mean, it was so much back then, and now I can't even imagine that happening. But yeah, had to learn how to think on your feet and how to trust your gut.
Yeah,
I think that and trust what you learned. Because we, having Mike, Tony, Cindy all teaching classes. Rex would come in and speak as well, but that they were great teachers, and just watching them in the athletic training room, I'm watching what they did.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that pops into my head is that, having to figure out what to do on a road trip way far away from home, and I think it would be different if we were going to a MAC school, the relationship that all the MAC athletic trainers had. And I think that would have been totally different, but going to Florida.
You're right. Yeah.
Trying to figure that out.
Yeah. I think it's funny. You try to explain a little bit, even to when they were undergraduate students, I would try to explain to them what it was like when we had our clinical assignments. Cause they would always ask me, well, who was your clinical supervisor? And I would say, well, it was this person, but they were never at practice. No. I mean, it was always us. Yeah. And it was us talking to the coaches. It was us talking to, parents. It was us, talking to physicians on the road, making decisions, exactly. All those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're the ones doing treatments and tapings in the hotel room.
Yeah. I mean, there was no, oh yeah, I'll just go help this person there, because there was nobody to do that. I remember vividly, like when I first came to Ball State, they didn't know what to do with me because I was a junior college transfer, and they put me with softball finally. And I had Sherry Beechler and first, and then Sherry got moved someplace else, and then it was Carl Landis. Carl got kicked out of the field and sports building for having sweats over his blue jeans by Vicky. And so I was and it was like right in the middle of an ankle evaluation. I was there standing there watching Carl do this ankle evaluation. Vicky walks in, kicks him out, and says, "You do it." And that was how it rolled. By that time now I'm doing everything. And I didn't have to, I couldn't go, like if I had something if I couldn't figure it out, then I would go ask Vicky. But most of the time I was figuring stuff out on my own and using, like you said, using what you learned in class, using what you did talking to the other staff athletic trainers or talking to Vicky or whatever, and then figuring it out. And that's kind of what was expected. I mean, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, you can't handle this. We expect you to kind of pull your bootstraps up and figure this out. If there was something grossly mismanaged, then obviously they would make a change. Or if you wore blue jeans practice, then something happened. But I think that's the thing, is that trying to I think it shows how far we've come or gone back. I don't know. It depends on what your perspective on it is. But healthcare, from a healthcare standpoint, I think we've gone forward. From an experience standpoint, I'm not sure that we're providing those levels of kind of clinical experiences, immersive, like they used to like to talk about now, immersive experiences. That was always the ultimate immersive experience for me, when you had to be there on your own and there was nobody around to help you. So
and the staff, the staff trusted you. That's how they base their assignments and who they would put you, if they would put you with other, usually an upperclassman student, or sometimes if you got lucky, a graduate assistant. But I think, they put a lot of trust in 19, 20-year-old students.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just how it was.
Yeah. Yeah. With I don't want to say minimal, they weren't minimal classes, but you had
minimal supervision for sure.
Yeah, minimal supervision, but you had like an evaluation class, or you had, you weren't getting your rehab class till the end of your, you're kind of having to figure that out a little bit along the way. So I think that a lot of times it was you picking, and you know what it was too, I think, and I think you can admit to this, is that you had great upperclassmen that you could go pick their brains as well. And there was a lot more camaraderie in that aspect of like, all right, I can't figure this out, but I can go talk to an upperclassman, whoever that might be, that maybe worked that sport the year before, and would help you kind of guide you a little bit with that too.
Oh, yeah. Deb and Joanne, they gave great advice.
Yeah.
When I first got my first sports assignment, they just gave great advice.
Yeah.
So they were good on all levels.
Yeah. Anything, I know we were talking about some stuff in that first episode before my phone died, but anything from your Ball State experience that outside of athletic training, clinical experiences, or that was a legendary group that you were going through with. So anything that you can think of that was kind of memorable when in your time at Ball State back then?
Well, we had get-togethers, bash, fall bash, spring bash. So we would always have, fall bash. We had at my parents' house in Anderson one year, and my parents had an indoor pool. Although I don't think we used, I don't think anybody swam that day when we had the fall bash there. But you brought up Phil Nelson, and I remember Phil brought first Phil tracked mud in my mother's brand new house. So that was it. It was either Phil or Jessup that brought a frozen dessert, and somebody put it in the oven and warmed it up. So that was a disaster. I can't remember if that was Phil, because Phil always came to all of our our gatherings. Phil was there. So that was fun. And then we would we went out to Jessup's in Spiceland one year. We went down, Judy Landry went to Lake Lemon. And a lot of people, they did water skiing. I've had some great pictures from that. And we had a couple golf outings.
Yeah.
I've got some fabulous pictures from that. That was, and the one golf outing I remember because when Neil came in.
Yeah.
Because I remember that. I'm trying to think. We would have we have Christmas parties.
Right.
All the students. We would go to Rex's house for that. That's, and when the sports medicine club would have guest speakers too, that was always a good time to get together. And that's, I think we talked about the last time, how Dave Jessup, why they called him Rev, because he showed up to one of those in a 3-piece polyester leisure suit, beige. I can remember it. It was like a tan beige, and he shows up, and I think it was Rex was like, "Oh, okay, we can get started. The Reverend's here,"
and it stuck.
And it stuck. So he's been Rev. He was Rev ever since.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
When I went to work 2 days, I remember staying in some random house with Deb and Joanne, and we would get up, before dark to go get to the training room. But they, like I said, they were the upperclassmen that were mentors. I mean, we just had a lot of fun. I think we talked last time. On Saturdays before home football games, we would all meet at either Shoney's or Rack's for their breakfast. They had a breakfast buffet, and then from there we would all carpool and caravan back to the stadium with our flashers. We'd turn our flashers on, and everybody was driving us in a line back.
Here, the original, it wasn't a walk, it was a drive, but it was the original stadium walk, which everybody does now. It's
right.
Just, it was the athletic trainers doing the stadium drive.
We did. It was just something corny, but something fun to do. So I think that's what the staff athletic trainers. I mean, they made things fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we learned a lot, but they just really made things fun.
Yeah. So I asked Mark about practical jokes or whatever. I mean, anything that you remember happened in your time there. I mean, he brought up the story about Joe Burton rigging up the vacuum cleaner. So, but I don't know if you had anything that you remembered or what.
I'll go back to Joe Burton. I mean that he would take the sling psychrometer and they would say, "Hey, we're going to play wherever we're playing next weekend has a high altitude. So can you go up to the top of the stadium and take a sling psychrometer reading?" So he would go up to the top of the stadium. And then, then the next week we're like, "Hey, we're playing on turf. So how about if you go out, probably the closest we could get, what if you go out to the middle, to the median and McGalliard and take a reading?" So I'm pretty sure Burton knew.
Yeah.
He would go do it. He would go up to the top of the stadium, go out. Yeah. He did it all the time. So, I mean, that's just something.
Yeah. It would have been, in this day and age, it would have been on somebody's phone and posted and reposted and retweeted. And yeah, it would have been all over. He could have been famous by this point, but back then nobody had that stuff. So you had to tell it.
Yeah, so have to remember the stories.
Yeah. So when you left, graduated from Ball State, what was your next step?
I was a graduate assistant at Ohio University.
Okay.
And so Skip Osler, Ball State guy. And I was at the MAC conference championships with women's track and in my hotel room. And I had applied to Ohio University and a couple other schools. And I get a phone call in my room, and it's Sue Hammond. And she's like, "Hey, Skip and I are down here in the lobby. Can you come down to interview for this graduate assistant position?" And I'm like, no, I'm in a t-shirt and shorts. I can't do that. So I went ahead. They said, "It's fine. Come on down." So I went ahead and did that, and didn't realize that that they had been at the MAC athletic trainers golf outing all day. And naive me didn't realize that meant that they had someone drive they had a beverage cart, and everybody pretty much was plastered. So my interview was in a lobby of some hotel in Ypsilanti, Michigan, with a drunk Skip and Sue. So I got the position. So went to Ohio University, did a non-thesis master's 1-year program, was farmed out to a high school, Morgan High School. And I was the first. They had graduate assistant athletic trainers from OU for years, but I was the first female. So that was a little bit different. I mean, Ohio University, Athens, you've been there. Yeah. It's a little bit different.
Oh yeah.
So there I had an ice machine, but it was about 3 miles away from the school at Central Market. And so I would pull up in the back alley, pull my car up, load up the coolers with the ice machine from their ice machine. And then on Friday nights, they would freeze big blocks of ice for me to put in the coolers for water. And so I'd walk right in the meat locker. and grab my blocks of ice and take out for the coolers. So that was
So what kind of car were you driving back then?
oh gosh, I think I had a 1989 Buick Regal. So
It was perfect.
It wasn't a tank.
Yeah, but it was perfect.
But it was big. It was big enough to
Yeah.
stuff in. So,
Awesome.
yeah, so learned a lot there. I mean, I remember I wrote letters back to like Rex and Tony and those guys asking for advice, and I remember writing letters telling them a story about, you know, how this had a student who had I think he had a high hamstring strain, and we just put an ACE wrap on it, but we had to go over his girdle because he didn't have spandex or anything. And then he came back to the training room because it was falling down. And so I'm down on my knees and I'm taking the wrap off, what's left of it. And, you know, I'm like, Mike, I don't know what to do. You know, you don't have, you know, we really have to, it won't go on, stay on your girdle. It really needs to go on skin, but you don't, you know, or spandex tights, you don't have that. And he just drops his girdle. And so here, I'm a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
First female athletic trainer, and I'm down on my knees, and this kid's in his tighty whities, and I'm like, if coach walks in, the football coach was also the athletic director. I'm like, yeah. I'm gone. I'm probably kicked out of everything. So of course, you know, I'm sure my face was super red. Kid didn't think anything about it.
Yeah.
Wrapped his hamstring. He went. Nothing happened. But I remember writing and telling Rex and Tony all about this. Oh my gosh, you know, I was in a training room alone with a 17-year-old boy. So
yeah.
So that's one of my favorite. That school, just tell you a little bit about it. They got out 2 days for the county fair and the first day of deer hunting season. So
there you go.
It was a very rural school.
Yeah, it's and that's again, I think those are experiences that you never forget. And it definitely there again, I think there's perspective in any experience that you're going to be in, and especially where you're working at, that make things a little bit unique, and especially in that first experience, even though you were pretty much on your own on a lot of clinical experiences at Ball State, you were really, really on your own out there. Because how far was that from OU? You told me
it was a 45-minute. It was a 45-minute drive.
How far from the nearest hospital?
Oh goodness, Zanesville or Athens were the closest hospital, so 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, the little town didn't even have a McDonald's. I mean,
yeah.
But they didn't have McDonald's.
You and the school nurse were like the major medical providers in that area.
We were. I mean, they had a couple clinics. I mean, but trying to find where somebody could get an X-ray.
Yeah.
It was hard. I think there was I don't think the clinic or any of the primary cares had X-ray capabilities back then in 1989, 90. I don't think they had anything.
Yeah. Did you have anybody that needed an X-ray, a couple times?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. So, so they'd have to go to Zanesville. Most of the time they went to Zanesville. Actually, some would even go to Parkersburg, West Virginia.
Yeah. That's about, kind of in that little triangle area through there. Wow. Yeah. Again, I think that sometimes we're really spoiled too. We're thinking like, oh gosh, I can't get into an X-ray till tomorrow or whatever. And and it's like 2 miles down the road. And you experienced something a whole lot different.
Yeah. I mean, I had a student yesterday come back to school, and she's from COVID. She was COVID positive.
Yeah.
And I said, but you have to see a physician before you can return to volleyball. And she's like, oh, okay, I think I can get in today. And I'm like, well, I don't think so. Well, sure enough, she got into her pediatrician. Same day, comes back with the signed return to play form. And I'm like, that wouldn't have happened. That wouldn't have happened back then at all.
No, not at all. No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, so you're done at OU. You have obviously had an interesting experience, and it sounds like a great experience, but an interesting experience. So what is your first job out of grad school?
First job out of grad school is I worked in Skip Bossler helped me. I worked in Columbus, Ohio I worked for Baxter Physical Therapy.
Okay.
And I was covered 2 high schools in Columbus. So for Columbus Public Schools, I worked at West Side High School and Briggs. So those were inner city schools back then. So I went from a rural to inner city, stayed there, was there about 9 months. One of the interesting things there was Labor Day weekend, and my mom had come to stay with me for the weekend, and she didn't go to the football game. She stayed back in my apartment. And when I get back home, and I can't even remember if we won or lost the football game, but we were watching the news to see all the scores, to see how my other team did. And it said violence erupts after local high school football game. I'm like, oh, I have to watch that to see where that was. And so it was my high school. It was the high school that I was at that night. My mom's looking at me, and it turned out it didn't happen at the school. It happened as some kids were walking home. I guess they were throwing rocks. Ended up busting out some guy's window. He came out, yelled at him. They beat the crap out of him. So the next two games, we had to start at like 6:00 and had a heavy presence. And I would always park inside actually the football gates of the stadium, and then either a coach or a player would walk me to my car after the game. So that was a total experience. And I remember one time there too, at Briggs, I had a player that had a really bad ankle sprain, needed to get an x-ray, and I had to call mom, and mom wasn't sure if she could get a ride to come get him. She's like, I gotta see if I can get a ride. So mom gets there, and I'm explaining to her, and the coach is right there with me, and mom is she's not looking at me, she's not acknowledging me at all. And afterwards I was talking to the coach, I'm like, oh my gosh, the mom. He's like, well, she was high. I'm like, what? Yeah, she was high, you couldn't tell? And I'm like, I don't know, she's somebody's mom, how?
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, yeah, it's like, thank goodness she didn't drive it, she got a ride. But she'll take care of her boy. But she was, well, that's not something I had dealt with.
Yeah.
So spent about 9 months there. And then I got a call. Rex Sharp called me and said, are you still looking to get back to Indiana? And I said, yeah. And he's like, I think I have a job for you. And he said, Avon High School. And what had happened at Avon is Brownsburg had an athletic trainer. That was Dave Jessup.
Yeah.
And so Avon, if Brownsburg, biggest rival, if Avon has one, Brownsburg has one, Avon has to have one. So Avon's athletic director called DePaul University to see if they knew of anyone that was looking. This was February, and they didn't know anyone, but Rex called, is a Ball State guy. So Rex called Ball State, and then Rex Sharp called me. So that's how I ended up at Avon. And so this is the beginning of my 31st year.
Oh, wow.
Avon High School.
Wow. So you come into Avon, what kind of stuff that you were like the first full-time athletic trainer? Had they had anybody coming out from anything else?
Occasionally, I think someone would come out for injury checks. I think that was Brett Cope. He would have been with Marge Albaum at the Center for Hip and Knee Surgery in Mooresville.
Yeah.
So I think he was coming out occasionally for injury checks. I think maybe some home football games, they may have had someone come out for about a year.
Yeah.
But no, I was the first one.
So what did you walk into when you started?
They actually had an athletic trainer who was on staff but not practicing. So her name was Mary Hamlin, and Mary Hamlin had ordered a couple taping tables, treatment tables. She had ordered some supplies, so I had some of that.
Yeah.
Some of that already. It was in an old locker room that was under the gym. But it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
So just building relationships, getting to know the coaches, that was the hard part. And I remember setting out at a baseball game the 1st of April, and it's 35 degrees and sleeting, thinking, this coach is an idiot. Why are we playing?
Right.
And I'm complaining to the little managers, the little girls that were managers, and I'm just like complaining nonstop. Turns out the one manager's dad was our superintendent. So that probably wasn't a good first month of employment. But yeah, so it wasn't bad. That the coaching staff was great. Again, we were all just trying to figure things out. They were trying to figure out how to deal with an athletic trainer. So it was pretty good start.
Right.
To my career here at Avon. So, and I was a full-time athletic trainer back then. No teaching.
No teaching. Yeah. You were
Teaching helped me get the job
right.
because they could hire me as a certified employee, and that helped, but no teaching at that time.
Yeah. So when did you start doing some teaching then? When did that happen?
That was about 11 years ago. So we had budget cuts, and our principal said, hey, we can't afford a full-time athletic trainer. We're going to have to let some teachers go. So you're going to have to go to the classroom. So at first, remember I said I was a social studies major. So they said, you're going to be teaching history of the world, geography on a 9th grade team. And I'm like, great. It's been 20 years since I've had a history class. So I started studying, got out my 20-year-old college stuff because I'm a hoarder. So got that stuff. I started looking over that. And then after spring break, they said, no, you're going to teach human body systems and Project Lead the Way in their biomedical science program. So I had to go for 2 weeks of training for that in Baltimore. And so I've been teaching that. This is my 11th year of teaching human body systems, which it's a good fit. There's only a couple, there's only one small unit on musculoskeletal, but today we're doing restriction enzymes and gel electrophoresis with DNA. So I've got that at my lab after this.
Yeah.
But it's been good. It's been good to teach. I teach half day. I teach 3 sections in the afternoon, and then full-time athletic trainer in the fall, and then I'm a part-time athletic trainer the rest of the year.
Yeah.
In the fall season.
Yeah. How is that? Project Lead the Way is kind of interesting. And I've talked to Mark about it a little bit, and I mean, because you're really kind of encompassing a lot of medical disciplines in that grouping. And how many? I mean, out of all those kids that you've taught in the last 11 years, I mean, how many of them are in the healthcare field right now?
A lot. And I teach the second course. So by the time they get to my class, that my class either confirms they don't want to go into healthcare or they do want to go into healthcare.
Right.
And we say our program accepts everyone. So we say there's a place in healthcare for everyone.
Right.
So yeah, we have several. I think I have three dentists now.
Yeah.
I don't think I have any physicians yet. There's still some that are in medical school, but there's physicians, assistants, nurse practitioners. We have someone who's majored in orthotics and prosthetics. We've got vet techs,
right?
Pharmacists, several pharmacists. And then there's some who, of course, are work at a bank, work in business, and wasn't for them.
Yeah. No, I think the reason I brought that up, because I mean, the thing is that what we're trying to, I think in athletic training is we're trying to establish ourselves as players in the healthcare systems, and when you have an opportunity, in my opinion, when you have an opportunity to influence other professions, just not athletic training, in that healthcare system, I think it builds a little bit of more respect for us as athletic trainers, as healthcare providers, as opposed to somebody, again, as we've always been kind of pigeonholed into this whole athletic type of thing. And I think that it's kind of like you're doing the groundwork for advancing this profession as a healthcare provider, because you are teaching the next generation of providers, either physicians or pharmacists or nurses or nurse practitioners or physician assistant. They're going to come back and say, oh yeah, this Angie taught my Project Lead the Way class that really got me started on this pathway to get into healthcare. And I wish that, I wish there were more opportunities to do that and especially, I think that's a role that as athletic trainers, if you wanted to teach a little bit, that I think that fits our wheelhouse. I mean, you've been doing it for 11 years. That kind of fits our wheelhouse and what we could do. So
is that last week I had a student reach out to me, a former student. He's a senior at IUPUI, major in exercise science. He reached out to me on LinkedIn, of all places.
Yeah.
And then I got him my email and we corresponded a little bit, but he wants to go to grad school for athletic training. So he's like, can I come out and talk to you? So he came out last week, came to a volleyball game, and had a great conversation. We talked about, he's kind of geared in on UIndy right now, but we talked about other
Right.
places that he could apply. Of course, I brought up Ball State.
Yeah.
And then he came out the football game on Friday night, but just, he remembered, he remembered that I think with him, I think it was and this was just last week and I can't remember. He was talking about how I used him like to demonstrate like what the difference on his leg, what's the lateral side of his knee as opposed to the medial side of his knee, and what ligaments are there. And so he said, he said, I was the only one with shorts on in that, that day. So you just had me set up on the table. And so that, that's something that stood out to him. I mean, something that, very little, but that stood out to him. So it'll be interesting. He's a good kid. He was a good student. He was a band kid here. He was in a band. He was not an athlete whatsoever.
Yeah.
And now he wants to get into athletic training.
Yeah. No, it's I think that's what's evolving too. I think there's 10 kids in our class right now, and 9 of them are from Ball State. They did their undergrad in exercise science here. And I'm not sure all of them were former athletes. I think they were probably involved in something else. And that's okay. I mean, that's, again, I think if you have an interest or a passion to follow that healthcare, situation or healthcare profession, that's what you want to do, then good, great. I mean, you don't have to have a background in being a former athlete and do those types of things and stuff like that. I mean, I was a manager, you were being a man. I mean, but we were around athletics. And so I think that helped. I mean, really, honestly, what I tell people is I just wanted to get into the games for free. So I found a way to do it. So my parents didn't have a lot of money for me to go to all these sporting events that I wanted to go to. So they said, you have to figure out a way that you can get in for free. Oh, okay. Well, I'll go tape some ankles or whatever. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, get in for free and have a good seat.
Yeah. Now I get in for free because I'm a line judge for my daughter's volleyball team. That's how I get in for free now, So that was last night. So
I'm thinking, I was thinking about if I had to officiate any sport, it would be like middle school volleyball. I would totally do that, because all you have to do, it's just going to blow the whistle, have them serve, and then that's it. Because it's probably not going to go. If you could get it over the net, it's probably not going to go back over if you get the serve over. So I'm thinking that might be a side gig.
It's definitely not been. It's not been as stressful, even though I did have not last night, but the game before last. I had some of our own parents complain about some of my calls that were on the line, that their perspective was that it was in or it was out. My perspective, because I was right there, was a little bit different. And my wife told me that there was some rumbles like, oh, is he supposed to be for us or something like that? I'm like, I'm just trying to play it fair. So there you go. One of the things I wanted, in your career, you've been involved with a lot of things within our profession, in the IATA and NATA and NATA and stuff. But one of the things that's kind of been my passion and why I'm doing this has been the history and archives kind of portion of stuff. So talk to me about how you got involved with that, why that interests you, why that is something that you're really passionate about. And just kind of give me an idea of especially what the NATA is doing now, which I think is really, really cool stuff. So
I will real quick go through. I started with the IATA as high school rep, and Mike Ferrara got me involved with the IATA with that. And I remember talking to Jeff Franciosi, and I replaced him. And I said, what do you do? And he's like, well, nothing. I'm like, okay, great, I'll do it. And then, so that was for about a year. And then Mike, Mike was the president, and then Mike went off to do the 96 Paralympics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Rick Shaw then took over as president, and Rick was like, hey, we need some people to run for office. Can you would you run for treasurer? And I'm like, well, who would I be running against? And he's like, Steve Schindler. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Because everyone knows Schindler, I'll lose.
Yeah.
So I won by 2 votes. So that's how I got involved with the IATA. So meeting people there, just making the connections and, building relationships, friendships. that led to Marion Vergink asking me to be a part of the History and Archives Committee for IATA. So I did that and absolutely loved it because, I think I told you I was a history major. That was my favorite class.
Yeah.
I love the history. And then realizing how much history is in Indiana, which is incredible. I mean, when you think Purdue, IU, and Ball State, I mean, their mark on athletic training.
Yeah, don't forget Indiana State. We'll hear some comments.
In Indiana State too.
Yeah, we'll get some comments back.
Okay, that was a little bit later, but I'm talking the early years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Spike Dixon and Bud Miller.
Yeah.
And then throw in Binky and the ISU people.
Yeah.
But it was fun looking at, trying to dig up old stuff, looking at old memorabilia, looking at old minutes from the IATA. So then that led to being invited to be as a part of the NATA Historical Commission. It's just a work group. We'd go down to Dallas. Usually we'd have to provide our pay for our own flight, but then they would take care of housing and food.
Right.
So we would just go down. I'd go down with them and just look through a lot of stuff. Look through things that they have in boxes. Just bankers' boxes full of stuff that's in a warehouse of old print material. So looking at that, and just a lot of fun to look at it and see how far our professions come. And again, still to see Indiana's mark on a lot of this. Right. Then was asked 2 years ago to be as a part of the historical commission with from Roger Klesiak. So I've been doing that. Still on the History and Archives Committee for IATA. Last weekend I was just up at Purdue and helped interview the legends. We had a legends interview with Kent Evans.
Yeah,
I got to interview Kent. So that's always fun and interesting. And then we did Adam Thompson from Indiana Wesleyan too. So that's the project that IATA is currently working on, is to get an oral history.
Yeah.
Of athletic training. The exact same thing what you're doing, Troy, is where IATA and NATA are trying to interview a lot of our legends, Hall of Famers, some not necessarily that are in the Hall of Fame, but our legends have a great story.
Right.
So we're just trying to get to some of those, before it's too late. So we've got a list to do. We're also trying to go back. Rich Carey's searching for that first NATA. So who were the leaders in that first NATA? So they tried to form, and then some regional differences and World War II kind of got in the way a little bit of that. But there was the first NATA that we're trying to document. We want to get an online museum, so the membership and the public can see these stories. Right. And we want to have virtual exhibits in this online museum. So I'm currently working on one I think I told you, and I'm working on it with Jim Dickerson for JD. So I'm working on his exhibit. I've collected all the information. I'm not very good about writing it up, but I can collect it. And so that's at the point where I've got everything collected. Just need to start writing that up.
Yeah. It's I think that first when I kind of started delving into this a little bit, it was and it was more just trying to and again, the digital media archives really kind of, when I started playing around with that, that's really what got me going. And but I realized that pictures and documents and stuff are great because they give us a snapshot of what was going on then, but the stories that have to go along with that eventually are what draw us in and then help us understand kind of all the stuff that fills in the gaps of those pictures and stuff. And I think that's why this was important. And hopefully this will, I'm trying to think about I was trying to think about my next guest this morning, like who am I going to have on and whatnot, and trying to roll down a list of I'd like to have a group like your group, and then a group of older people, and then maybe even a group of some younger folks to kind of balance stuff out, and then just kind of have a pattern like that down the line. But I think that if you don't have that history, some professions are so big that they can't connect the dots regarding that. And we're still small enough, even though we're getting bigger, we're still small enough that we can connect those dots and present that story and at least give some semblance of where it all started, basically. And I think that's important as we move forward, so that they do understand that, you know, it wasn't always where it is now, more healthcare based. It was athletic based, or you know, rubbers, or whatever you want to call athletic trainers at that when it all started. But to have those names and people and pictures and stories and whatever with that, will help them have a greater appreciation for the opportunities that they may have now. So
right. I mean, it's just there's so much history. There's so much history there. And I mean, you know, I know when you found some of the videotapes from the Ball State.
Oh yeah. I was like gold. I mean, again, that was like, oh! I remember John Miller, you know, I sent it to John and he was like, oh my gosh, I can't remember the last time I heard my dad's voice. And to me, that was really, really cool, because it wasn't just an athletic training thing. It was a family thing. And I think that was, again, thank goodness we did find those. And thank goodness they're being preserved for that. You know, even the stuff, you know, we've talked a lot about the Don interview. And that's where Ball State was really good about too, because even back in the 70s or 80s, they were probably a little bit ahead of the curve on getting video stuff, or interviewing people and then preserving that video for whatever reason, you know, for that. And so, you know, the story, we're going to go back to Ball State a little bit, because I remember I've showed, you've seen the video with Rex, right? That Maury did. Yeah. So were you coerced into wearing shorts all the time? Did you say, the heck with that rule, I'm not going to wear shorts all the time?
No, I'm a Ball State person, Troy. I wore shorts. I remember that when I first got to Avon, and it was, I thought it was 91. It was probably football sectional.
Yeah.
And my athletic director, he's like, I had shorts on. He's like, oh, you know, it's kind of like, oh, you're not going to last. And I'm like, oh yes, you know, just because you said that, oh yes, I will. So yeah, so I wore shorts. I got that was at 1995. I think regional championship. We played Cathedral. It's below zero. It was below 0 temps, you know, and I've got, or maybe with wind chill below zero. It was probably like, I know it was like 16 degrees or something, but I had shorts. I had shorts on.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the first games I didn't wear shorts. And I remember Lito was like, oh, didn't see you. Where's your shorts? You know, something like that. But yeah, now I've got a you know, a battery powered heated jacket. And
it's okay. We all get older, and we all get older and a little bit smarter, and we all want to last a little bit longer. So at some point in time, you have to kind of, you can break them out. I had pants on the other day, and one of my student athletes like, you got pants on? I'm like, yeah, it's a little chilly out today. And you know, I just, you know, I didn't have the heart to tell him that I probably didn't have any shorts that were clean in my laundry either. So I just kind of went with it a little bit on the weather part. But yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the strange, and I shouldn't say strange, but one of the traditions that was established by Rex, and we all took pride in that. And you know, I remember looking over at the sidelines during football when I worked at 1990, and those guys are weak. They don't have shorts on. Look at them all, you know. It was just a fun thing. Like you talked about, it was a fun thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and other schools had the same thing. I remember there was a local athletic trainer here. It was a Purdue grad, and she wouldn't let, she was an outreach coordinator for a little bit, and she just thought it was terrible if you wore let's say black sweatpants and a white jacket, you know, or a different color jacket. It was the Purdue thing. If you wore black sweatpants, you had to wear a black sweatshirt or black, you know, a black jacket. I mean, just little things like that. But that was ingrained in her, and I think that was probably a Denny Miller thing, and that's what you have to wear. This is what we do. So that's what her outreach athletic trainers, she would ding them if they didn't have matching tops and bottoms.
Yeah. I'm gonna probably do a podcast. You know, what I'm gonna do is, it's gonna be like Sindri and David Craig and maybe Jerry Bell or something like that. But it's gonna be on the white uniform, you know, way back when, which I found out from David was a pinky thing that translated to Bud, and Jim had said something about that too. That was a Bud thing. But David tells a story that he was up helping out with the Minnesota Vikings one year, and they had a practice. It was for training camp, and they had a practice, and it had rained that morning or something like that, and so the field's all slick and muddy, and he ran out there to get water to the guys, and all white, slipped and fell, and came up and was just head to toe mud. And he said Bud Grant, who was the head coach for the Vikings, he said barely said anything to any of us, and Bud actually came over to me and patted me on the back and started laughing and goes, well, I guess you'll have to go clean that up or something like that. He goes, and he never said anything to me the rest of training camp. So he goes, at least I got Bud Grant to laugh a little bit. But I mean, those are like we just talked, shorts, white uniforms, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think is still kind of, it would be interesting to hear the backstory on that, and as much as anybody can remember with that. But that's where I like to have those guys on there and say, hey, we're just gonna, maybe it's a 20-minute podcast, but we're gonna talk about why did you all wear white? But it was, I get it, it's like white healthcare, whatever, but I mean, you were in the field, and you were, Snowball would be in on that too. And so it would be interesting to say, who was the first guy that you saw that wasn't wearing white, and did you did you like, oh, they're not wearing white, what's going on, type thing. So yeah.
That's just I think what they called them, ice cream men. They looked like
yeah, they did.
Yeah,
they did. Well, listen, we're gonna wrap this up a little bit because I know you got to go. But tell me about what do you want to do? What are your future plans? What are you gonna do? What are you doing now? Just glaze over that a little bit.
I think I'm pretty good where I'm at. Again, part-time teacher, part-time athletic trainer. There was a situation last spring, a couple springs ago, where my 7th period class, they were just not a good mix of kids, and and it was just a really bad day. They were all hyped up, just a bad day. And I'm like, I just think I want to be a full-time athletic trainer. I just think that's what I want to do. I just want to go back to full-time. And then that night, our county baseball tournament had got rained out. So they were going to play on a weeknight. They were going to play, if we won, we would turn around and play. We played a 6 o'clock game. If we won, we'd turn around and play again. And we weren't very good that year. So I'm like, oh, we're not going to win. No big deal. Oh, we won. So we turned around and played at 8 o'clock. And so, it's like the 4th inning, it's 9:30 at night, and it's 35 degrees and sleeting again. And I'm thinking, maybe I should just be a full-time teacher. I don't want to do this. And then I thought, it's probably pretty good trade here. I'm probably where I'm supposed to be.
Right.
Halftime teacher, halftime athletic trainer. And we have 2 other athletic trainers from Hendricks Regional Health here that are amazing. And so like right now in the fall, my responsibilities are volleyball and boys tennis. And I'll go to football games. If it's sunny and 70.
Yeah.
And it's home, and it's a home game. So right now, so I have that opportunity to do that. That's where I'm at in my career. But I don't know. I think I'm pretty comfortable right now with it. I still like high school most days.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part of working with teenagers is most of the time you just get to see part of their story, and then when you get to see the rest of the story, when that kid comes back and like this, the student who came back who was a band kid and now wants to be an athletic trainer, or, I had a former student, he was a student athletic trainer aide for me, graduated from high school back in 1999. And he's a physician. He was a hospitalist, and now he's doing a fellowship in pulmonology at Cleveland Clinic.
Oh, wow.
He started right before COVID.
Yeah.
And so he just reached out to me this fall and said, hey, are you still teaching, still athletic training? How's it going? And if you're still teaching, pencil me in as a guest lecturer in your class.
Awesome.
It's like,
Yeah.
I'm applying for jobs. I'll be done in May. I'm applying for jobs in the Indianapolis area. Pencil me in.
Yeah.
So, when you get to see the rest of the story like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because that's really why we all got into it in the first place. It was fun, it was sports, it was whatever. But you start, as you get further in your career, it's really cool to see, like you said, how they're doing and what's going on. That's why Facebook has been awesome a little bit, and have that ability to see those former kids as they grow up and see their own kids and do those own, see how they're doing with that stuff. Or you get the luxury of treating their kids that you've been there long enough. So
I have the second generation.
Second generation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, listen, Angie, thanks a lot. Like I said, I would like to have you back on with some other people, and we're going to get there. But this was a great fun. So just hang out here, and I'll make sure I get this stopped, recorded, and done, whatever.
Thanks, Troy, for doing this. Thanks so much. This is awesome.
It's fun. I mean, this was like the biggest thing I was looking forward to today. The rest of the day will be just fine, no matter what happens, because I got to do this morning. So it'll be great. So that's the fun part about it. And now it's easier because we can do this. So it's awesome.
That's perfect. Hopefully it works.
All right. So we've gone off the roll with Angie Miller. Thank you. I want to thank Angie for coming on the podcast today. It's never easy to carve out time to talk about yourself, especially when you're as busy as athletic trainers are. But she did a great job, and especially since we had to redo the podcast due to my phone almost blowing up when we were at my house trying to record the first one. But also, this is our first Zoom podcast. I think it turned out pretty good, so we'll be doing more of those as well. Give me some feedback either on the Anchor app or the podcast platform that you're listening to if there's a chance to give some feedback. You can also email me at tchirsch@gmail.com. And I've gotten some feedback either on Facebook or even a couple of text messages from some friends that have listened to it. So it's great to hear that. We're really going to try to get some cool stuff down and get some of these stories recorded from some great folks. And I'm looking forward to it. We have some surprises ahead. I'm looking forward to reconnecting with some people as well. So have a great day. Take care.